Can everybody see that okay?
hmm
Excellent. All right, let me just make sure you're all moved over. Cool. All righty. So, welcome to your recipe for visual strategy. So obviously I'm Amber, Carrington is with me here. We'll be introducing ourselves in a moment, but what you will be seeing are GIFs. I love GIFs. I think they're fun. When Carrington saw this last night, she was like, oh, you made some updates. Okay, cool. So yeah, so Carrington, if you want to take lead on a little bit of this, feel free to.
Yeah, so kicking it off, Amber and I have known each other for, oh geez, the past few years. We met just through networking, and a lot of times you don't know who knows who and what amazing people you're going to get connected to. So over the past few years, we have learned that we have a lot of synergies together and we complement each other really well. So doing these different educational type calls, we love to do them and we just have fun with it. So we are chatting about visual strategy and why it is so important to brands. And also, when you're creating visuals, what are the things people don't always think about, especially if you're a smaller brand or you're in a startup phase, emerging, going through a rebrand? There's so many different avenues you can take. So, what are those things that maybe you didn't think about beforehand? So, we are here to bring those things top of mind. We want this to be educational, fun, collaborative. If you have questions, feel free to ask. We will have time at the end as well. But with that, that's kind of what we're going to be doing. I'll be talking about the photography side. Amber is here to talk about the PR side. So, are you ready? Let's kick it off. I'll do a little intro about myself. So, for those of you on here who don't know me, my name is Carrington Crothers, and I run a brand photography agency out of Worcester, Massachusetts called Prospect Street Studio. And I like to do things a little bit backwards when it comes to photography. I don't like to just say, let's take photos, here you go, have fun implementing it. I want to learn more about your brand. Understand what that purpose is. Why are we creating these images? Why do you need them? Who's going to see them? What's even the importance of it? And really like honing in on how are these images going to actually impact your brand? Because if you're creating visuals that aren't impacting your brand, why are we even creating them, right? So I am very passionate about creativity, educating brands, helping them out in any way possible that I can. So on a professional end, that's a little bit about me. On the personal end, I am a dog mom to a 12-year-old dog named Zoe, who is sitting over there right now. And I am currently working on my second children's book. I'm not a great writer, but I love writing. That's why there's editors in the world. So I'm currently working on my second children's book right now. And those are two little fun facts about me. But yeah, anything photography related, if you guys have any questions ever, I am an open book. Feel free to talk to me, and I will hand it over to Amber to introduce herself.
Excellent. Thank you, Carrington. Always a pleasure to work with you. So yeah, my name is Amber and I am the founder of Ivy Hill PR. So we're a brand communications agency that helps small to medium-sized businesses and brands really get on track with what it means to put your messages out there and also have a better understanding about audience perception so that way it influences, your direction for your messaging. We'll go into it more later. Basically, I started Ivy Hill because I wanted to make sure that people had the support they needed. I'm a huge nerd, not just, fun side of loving Dungeons and Dragons and being a plant mom. But I really value the power of research, understanding, and bringing things down to a base level so everybody can understand things. So I've spoken internationally, in Paris actually, about barriers to access for small businesses in trying to grow their brands on and offline. And I have a, background in film studies. I actually was a teacher of media production classes for years. So video is like my best friend. And I also have a clear understanding of how to get people to take their ideas out of their head and the things that they visualize and think about all the time and make it come to life in a way that supports their business goals. A little bit about me. I actually used to play roller derby. We'll also go into that a little bit later. But yeah, in my free time, love to read, love being outdoors. You can easily find me, adventuring around a swamp or hiking, things like that. But what I'm really eager to chat about today is making sure that you have the support and some understanding and some little nuggets to kind of start moving you ahead for the next process of leveling up your brand. So with that, we can kick it over to Carrington if you'd like.
Let's do it.
Sweet. All right, let's dive into the brand photography side of things.
All right, so this is a base overview of what I'm going to be talking about. So, what happens before you take the photo? I really like honing in on that. And what me and Amber like to say is like, what happens before the egg hatches? So if you have ever been on one of the webinars with me and Amber in the past, we do a lot of chicken puns. There's a long story behind it. Just roll with it. We have a blast with it. So today is before the egg hatches. 3 things we're going to be talking about is the who, the what, and the why behind your photo. After that, we're going to go back to 3rd grade for a little bit, and we're going to talk about art class. So, Amber, if you want to switch to the next slide.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So when you hear me say the who behind your photo, what is your first thought? You guys can put that in the chat. That would be awesome. There's no wrong answers. Feel free to share. If you don't want it to be public, you can send it to me privately. No worries. But the who behind your photo, what is the first thing that pops in your head? Who you are in your brand? Okay. Anything else? The voice of my brand? Who is the audience for this photo? Customer emotional connection? These are all great answers. So, first thing, who are you shooting for? Who are you trying to sell to? Are you the person who is selling dog treats? Because I guarantee you, you're not selling to the dog, right? Are you shooting for the dog? Is the dog going to see it? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know how well that's going to resonate. So, who are you shooting for? Really kind of break that down. Are you trying to hit a certain target audience? A really specific type of a person? Maybe they have a health issue that they're trying to overcome, or they're going through some transformation in their life. Really hone in, like, who's that person? How would you describe them? Right? Break down all of those different characteristics, because if you're marketing to me, you might not be marketing to Amber. We are, as much as we're great friends, we have very different personalities, right? So you might not have that same exact response when you start looking at the two of us, and how are you going to appeal to us? So write down these questions, take a screenshot of it, and then think about, does the content that you're creating appeal to that who? So if we think about it, when you hear the name New Balance, what is the first thing that pops in your head? Feel free to put that in the chat, or don't. I can't force you to do anything. Sneakers, perfect. Sneaker. We even got, there we go, Aurora, dad. That is what I was looking for. The dad shoe. Most people think of New Balance either as baseball or the dad shoe, right? 2 things they're really well known for. If New Balance starts creating imagery and they're trying to sell a dad shoe and they're making it like a party scene, they're not going to attract that dad. So when you really hone in on who that person is, you will become known for it. So think about it. And with time, time will also tell. Who is resonating with it? Sometimes you start posting and you're like, wait, this is resonating with a totally different audience. Maybe that's different. And kind of go with the flow with that one. But that's a really important part, is the who. Number, if you want to switch slide.
Yeah, definitely. So for questions, we will definitely have a Q&A at the end of this. So make sure you hold on to that because I do see a question about aspirational content, and that is very important. So we will touch on that in the Q&A.
All right. Talked about the who. Now we're talking about the what. What are you taking a photo of? Put that in the chat. Think about it. What are you really taking a photo of? Is it as simple as it sounds? Kathleen said, what you sell. Amber, want to go to the next slide? David said, your product. I'm going to give you as a hint. It is not always the product. The benefits of your product, right? How your product is used, the lifestyle it fits, etc. Christian said the brand's connection to the audience, your target customer. All right, great answers. I love seeing the variety. It's always fun. So we all have a product, right? We all have something we're trying to sell, trying to get out to the world. When you're creating a photo, there's a lot of different aspects that we want to hit in those visuals. You want to be able to educate your viewer. How are you telling them more about your brand and your product without them having to go and read the description? Is that image inspiring them? Giving them that, ooh, I really want to learn more about this. I always say, like, what's that ooh factor? If you take your product out of your photo, does that photo still fit your brand? Does that photo still work with your branding and your marketing? Could you still use it? Can it still benefit your customer, your target audience? If the answer is no, we definitely need to start thinking a little bit more about everything that you're seeing in the frame of the photo. Because as much as you're selling the product, we're also creating a story. We're also trying to connect with people. So think about all your imagery without your product, without whatever it is you're trying to sell. And how much does that resonate? Are you hitting, like, on a scale of 1 to 10? A 1 to 3? 4 to 6? 6 to 10? Where are you on that scale on that imagery? Does it make sense? Does it help inspire people? So this is usually a tough one for people to really think about and grasp, but I think it's a really powerful way to think about your visuals beyond just, here's my product, it's pretty, and let's go look at it. Really hone down a little deeper than, I have a pretty product. Does that resonate with everyone? Because I know a lot of people can sometimes struggle with that one. All right. The why. Also one some people can struggle with. We're getting harder with each one here. So, why are you taking the photo at all? Why is this important? We can create an image in 2 seconds on our cell phone. So why are we doing it? Are we doing it just to post because we can? Are we taking the photo to market it? Are we sending it to a sales rep? Why are we taking it? Maybe you're trying to update your Amazon listing. Maybe you're trying to appeal to Walmart. Get into distribution. What are the channels you're trying to take that your visuals can help you achieve? More than just saying, let's take a pretty picture and hope it works. So a lot of brands, especially when they're starting out, this is kind of what they do. They just create the content. And then you have a database of like 1,000 photos and you're trial and error. And you're like, oh, this one's doing well. We're going to keep this one to the side. Oh, all right, this one worked. When you have like 5 photos out of 1,000 that are working really well, and then those are on your trade show banners, those are on your website, those are literally everywhere, which is fine, but it's still the trial and error process. So, will those photos translate elsewhere? If they worked really well on social, do they translate in an email blast? Will they translate if you're going to a trade show and you're making a trade show booth? Thinking about the why is really important to know it's not just a photo. We really want there to be a purpose behind it, because if we know that purpose, you will get those conversions. You will get more understanding from your target audience and your customer. If we can get people to say, ooh, that resonates with what I'm going through right now, or oh, look, I'm going on a hike and I'm going to New Hampshire and this is a New Hampshire scene with a New Hampshire product. Great. Now you just got into that audience. They're going to want to learn more. They're probably going to hit that buy to add to cart. Buy now. That's your end goal, is get that credit card pulled out if you're selling online. So think about those 3 main questions. Who are you selling to? What are you taking a photo of? And why are you taking the photo? Does, in that moment, taking a photo benefit the outcome you're looking for right now? Or are you just doing it because you can? Really great distinction right there. So I'll give you guys a quick second just to think about those. If you're taking notes, see Kathleen, I think, is writing like a madman right now.
The other thing too, we're going to be sending out a recording of this as well, but we're all about, I take a lot of notes too. So make sure you're writing down those key points. So when you go back to review, it's like, oh, right, that's what I was thinking.
All right. So like I promised, we are going to go back to art school. Back when you're in, I don't know, 3rd grade and learning about Picasso and Van Gogh, Michelangelo, whoever you think of when you think of a famous painter. Maybe it's one of them. Usually Van Gogh is one of the first ones that I think of. I usually think of the meme and it's like, where did the van go? And it's an actual van painted like Starry Night. Anyway, I think that's hysterical. But it's always one of my first thoughts when I think of artists. So usually there's 1 or 2 that people will be like, oh yeah, I remember learning about them. And these artists, these painters, they are not current. They are from a long time ago. But their work is standing the test of time. So, what do all of these painters have in common with their art that we don't do today? Does anybody have a guess? All right, Kathleen says thinking out of the box, uniqueness. This is a tough one. Longevity. Staying true to themselves. Thank you guys for being so available in the chat. I love it. I love getting you guys to think too. What in the world could they be doing differently that we don't do today? It's another change in the words on that one a little bit. All right, you want to go to the next slide? They moved a lot slower in their creation process, and they created for a purpose. If you're thinking of a massive canvas and you got to put oil paint on that canvas, every brush stroke is important. Knowing how they're mixing their colors is important. Knowing the composition and the layout is really important because they literally have a blank slate and they now have to create out of nothing. And it's going to take a lot of time. So, because we have access to a cell phone that can take a photo in less than 5 seconds that you can then go and post right away, you're not always planning for the better results, right? If you're composing for a purpose and you slow down and make it very intentional, you're going to have that longevity that the artists are getting. So if you go back a slide, Amber. So if we look at either of these paintings, right? Look at the one on the left. There's a lot of intentionality behind every placement in this painting. If you guys know the rule of thirds at all, it's basically taking the frame and breaking it into 9 squares. So this one does it very well and clear. So the primary part of this painting is in the bottom third of the image. And then everyone on the left is making your eye literally look to the right. Everyone on the right is making you look towards the left to be centered. That is the primary part of this entire painting, is what's happening right there in the middle. So that's really intentional. You can't just come up with that in 5 seconds, right? So when you slow down and think, I always tell people, like, think like a painter when you're creating imagery. What is the point if you're just going to take it in 5 seconds and you don't know how somebody's going to look through it? What is that process, right? Are you telling the person who is looking at your picture to look to the left because you have copy on your website right there that they really need to read? Is the photo helping them get to that point? If you want them to scroll, your visuals, the way the human eye looks through it, is it telling them, hey, we got to look here and scroll down? How is it benefiting? Because there's so much more to it than just saying, here's your photo. You can literally train people to look through a photo to get to the next step if images get composed correctly. So slow down, think like a painter. When you think about all of these topics, when we think about who, what, why, you're going to start making it so you're not just creating for creating's sake. You're creating to get your sale. And yeah, you might make less than 1,000 photos in a day, but you're going to be making more imagery that's going to have a stronger impact on the overall business. And that's really the end goal. That's not all about the quantity. So think like a painter. Be Van Gogh for a day if you want to. Maybe. I don't know who has the artistic ability to be Van Gogh. I don't. If you do, please teach me. That would be awesome. So those are my main points here. I know it's all about before the photo, but before the photo is vital because a lot of people create the photo and think about all this after. And then you're basically trying to puzzle things together and hope it works. So let's not be puzzling and let's just be strategic about it. And these are all topics I love to help people through. And if you're looking and you're like, hey, I don't know if this is beneficial or how to make this beneficial, we can always talk about it because I love talking about it. I really do. It's so much fun. So, from a photography standpoint, it's going to be affecting everything Amber's going to be talking about when it comes to like your PR, your marketing, and it's a visual base really for how people start talking about your brand. And if any of this is resonating, I love it. I hope you guys try some of these tactics and let me know if any of them really kind of make you think and slow down and what the benefit is. Feel free to let me know. Other than that, I will hand this over to Amber.
This dovetailed beautifully. And I know we kind of did that on purpose, Carrington, but so we take these awesome photos, right? We've taken some time to really think about, all right, this is the layout, this is my campaign, this is kind of what I'm thinking about. You're thinking strategically. You're not just posting constantly for the sake of posting constantly and hoping to get a sale. You have a game plan of sorts and you can really be focused on that. So what I'm going to talk about a little bit is you got the photos. What do you do now? Well, we're going to dial it back real quick, right? We want to be intentional with everything we do. So while you are creating these visuals, I want you to really consider how it's going to impact down the line how you use them, right? Because you're not just creating photos for the sake of creating photos anymore. You are literally empowering your business to drive forward and work with your audience on making sure that it resonates with them. So, what we're going to talk about first is what in the world I mean by brand communications, because it's kind of a buzzword and people ask me all the time, they're like, what does that actually mean? And we take a really holistic approach at Ivy Hill that's a little bit different. And I did that on purpose because I'm a very different person. So, what we'll start with is we're going to start with the difference between marketing and PR, because sometimes it can get muddy about what these things actually mean. After that, we're going to dive into why those awesome visuals that you've created with some of the guideposts that Carrington has laid out, why do they really matter? And there's a lot of preconceived notions and a lot of assumptions about that. So we're going to look at it from the lens of what we just learned about with marketing and PR. And then the question that everybody asks me all the time, how do I actually build that presence? How do we actually disrupt a market where there's already a lot of other products, you know? How do we do that? So I'm going to give you a couple tips for cracking open new opportunities. Again, the chicken analogies. We can explain it. Feel free to ask more questions about it. But just think about how can we take that egg of an idea and how can we start to really help it thrive, grow, and move forward in the direction we want. All right, so anybody have any questions? I know we've been going through a bit, so feel free to pop them in the chat quick if you just need to get them out of your head. Otherwise, let's dive into marketing and PR. All right, so first thing, raise your hand if you have a cousin. Marketing and PR are cousins. I want you to think of them that way. So marketing is basically how you are promoting your products. It's really sales driven, very metrics driven. You're generating that revenue. It's you talking about yourself. And sometimes when you're an emerging brand, you feel like you're talking to a bunch of, nobody in the woods and nobody's hearing you. How do you really know that it's resonating, right? You're pushing out messages. You're really making sure that you're strategic with it. You're using your visuals to help you get ads going, make sure that your branding's good. You're doing research. You got your pricing model right, all these different things. That's marketing, okay? Now let's look at the cousin, public relations. So this is getting in touch with all those people that are secretly in the woods that are kind of listening, but what are they perceiving when you give them those messages, right? It dovetails in with all of that advertising you're doing, with all that work you're doing to really get people to associate your product with a solution, which at the end of the day is what you're trying to do as a CPG brand. So PR is all about managing that reputation and the perception of your brand around stakeholders. And I don't just mean your audience or your direct market. I mean, how do your employees view it? How do investors view this? All those different people, almost like an onion. What are the different layers of influence that your brand is starting to hit on? So this is really about how can you build that credibility and build that trust? Because people want to buy from people and people want to buy from people that they trust. So everybody's kind of, probably at some point seen, oh, cancel culture. Oh, somebody didn't roll out their products fast enough and now the internet's, eating them alive in the comments section. That's a PR issue. Marketing issue is going to be, oh, that ad campaign didn't quite work because we rushed the visuals and we did not give enough time to promote. So now Q1's looking a little dicey. See the difference a little bit? They're related, a little different though. So think about that for a second, okay? So when it comes to our approach with Ivy Hill and what Carrington and I talk about all the time, it's holistic. You want to have both of those components. You want to know what people think about you, and you also want to be really clear about the messages you're putting out there and how you're doing it, right? Both of them kind of influence each other, and it's a little different than it was in the past. Usually PR was, oh, I got a new product. Let me just throw out a press release. I'll do a nice little media kit and I'll send it out, right? Well, nowadays, a tweet And a bunch of comments about it can impact or inform an entire ad campaign. You don't always see that all the time. And especially with, CPG and product-based businesses, that's crucial to know and understand because that's what's going to drive those numbers and build that trust at the same time. So now we're going to go a little bit into why these sorts of visuals and leveling things up really is important. And the first thing we're going to go into is brand identity and recognition. So this ties in quite a bit with the visuals because it's really important, as we know, to have very strong branding as a product-based business. So I want you to ask yourself how confident you are with your current branding. And this can be tough for people that either are going through a rebrand or maybe they're, starting up and emerging. You really want to make sure that you feel good. You can look at this logo every day. You can look at your brand colors. You can look at your photos. You like your website. You feel good about it because when you feel good about it, your audience is going to feel good about it. So again, cousins talking to each other, right? And going back to what Carrington was saying, do your visuals resonate? Absolutely. You want to make sure your target audience looks at this and says, oh, well, I want to buy that one versus that one. Why is that? Is it the message on the back of the bottle? Is it the color scheme? Is it the actual design? Is it the flow that they see when you start doing drip campaigns through emails because they hung out on your website and they put something in the cart, but they didn't make a sale? Those different things come into play as it relates to your brand identity and its recognition. And the most important thing, is it being consistent? So from a PR standpoint, this is so, so important. And I want you to really, really, after this call, think about and go through your current different areas of how you express your brand. Does your social media match your website? Do the Google reviews back up all those testimonials that you put out there? All those different things need to be aligned because, again, people want to know that they can trust you. If they start seeing something out of place or you're saying one thing here, but it sounds different here, and they're likely to go on to the next product that does build that trust with them. So why don't you be the first person to be that trustworthy source, that expert saying, hey, I'm being consistent across the board. You can trust me with this. The next part we're going to go into perception. And this goes right back to who, what, and why that Carrington was talking about, right? So going back to the New Balance idea. Okay. The dad sees a certain ad. All right, I can kind of see myself being there. I can really see myself wearing those shoes in particular because I feel like I resonate with that. And it's all about that perception of quality as well. You see a website that's a little bit rough looking, you kind of think twice about that user experience and whether you want to make the purchase versus something that's very streamlined, really shows how impactful your brand is in this person's life and how that product can really shift the narrative for how they live their daily lives. So when you start going through and thinking about your consistency and looking at the different parts of your brand and kind of taking a step back, which is so important, I want you to think, would you buy this based on what you see? Put your hat on, think about like what your audience would be thinking and say, would I buy this? If I saw this on the shelf at the grocery store, would I pick my own brand? And it's okay if you say no. It's okay if you say not quite yet. It's okay to, absolutely okay, and to say you're building on this, right? But you want to know where you're at so you can have a better direction for where you want to go. And going back to Carrington's point, visuals can hold you back. If people see something that looks really cool, but maybe the lighting's not really right, or maybe the color scheme's a little off from what your logo looks like based on this photo, or you're taking a picture of ice cream in the snow and you're trying to market to people in Miami. Might be a little tough. How are your visuals holding you back? And how can you level them up? And that's where going back to art school and taking your time and thinking about what's the game plan for these visuals? How do I want to apply them going forward? And what really matters most when it comes to constructing the story? Because as we know, PR, I got called it last week as a joke, spin doctors, right? It's all about the narrative. It's all about the story, right? So we really want to think about what is going to take you to that next level. And a lot of the times, those visuals, that's that first stepping stone that you can really dive into and be able to move things forward. So far we have our brand identity, which usually that's going to be the first thing you try to figure out when it comes to your product. Then you have your perception. What do people think about it? Now, what is that last thing? Differentiation. Now, I'm going to talk about the boogeyman in the room. CPG is a crowded space. We know this. When it comes to PR, very competitive. You want to get into those blogs with those top 3 tips, get the backlinks that go to your website directly, and somebody makes the purchase right away. You got to be different. You got to be able to stand out. So that's why those 2 first steps of your brand identity and your perception, that impacts how people are able to say, well, that's different than that. And going back to something that somebody said in the chat with the New Balance thing, New Balance isn't as good as Nike, I think, or something to that effect. That's differentiation. You really want to make sure that you're looking at, okay, what is actually making my brand different? You know, I have a skincare client, and one of the things that she runs into, she's all about veganism, sustainability, and being really intentional with how she helps her community. That has been helping her stand out substantially from the other soap maker that suddenly popped up right in the farmer's market. See what I mean? It's all about what makes you stand out and how your story ties into that. And that goes into your brand personality. Every brand has that different little vibe. And for business owners, it's really important to have a little bit of yourself in there. Because, like I said, who do people buy from? They're not going to buy from a product, they want to know the person. So, even if you're kind of behind the scenes and tucked away, if a reporter comes up and they say, hey, love this brand, really want to feature it in an upcoming piece that we have going on, who can I talk to? Are they going to talk to that nice little tincture bottle? No. They're going to want to talk to you. So having your personality come through and also your brand's voice and its personality come through, that's a story. That's something compelling. That's more than just, hey, we're doing a 10% off sale. You got some legs to that and you can really start to run with it. And the thing that comes up a lot with the product-based businesses that we work with, a lot of the time you start looking at what everybody else is doing, right? You get competitive. The space is crowded. You're like, okay, what are they doing? What are they doing right? And that can be so helpful in a lot of ways. You can find outlets that way. You can build your network that way. You know, I'm all about let's try to collaborate in some way before we start really duking it out, right? But if you're constantly looking in your rear view, what's going to happen, right? You're going to have a challenge with getting ahead the way you want to. So what we really want to do is make sure that you're not hyper fixating on that. You're making sure that you're moving forward in the direction that you want to go and looking out that windshield. Take a glance back at the rear view, look at the other lane, see what's going on around you, but move ahead in the direction that makes sense for you. So right now we got that brand identity, your perception, and your differentiation. Those are the 3 things that you want to take away today and really start to reflect on. So now the fun part. I mean, this whole thing's been fun for me, but building your presence. So I'm going to give you 3 tips off the bat. And we're just going to go over them real quick and you're going to reflect on it afterwards. So yes, CPG is consumer packaged goods. Thank you, Kathleen. The 3 tips for building your messaging. You want to clarify things. You want to know where your audience hangs out, and timing matters. So like I was saying earlier, making sure your message is clear, making sure things are consistent, making sure that you're prepared. You have those clear bullet points of this is what I'm about, here's what I do, here's why it matters, here's who I'm trying to reach, You go on a podcast because somebody reaches out to you on DMs, you feel a lot more prepared when you have that versus, well, I started it off when I was 5 and No, limited amount of time. You got to keep it moving. The next part is knowing where your audience hangs out. And this is something that Carrington and I actually joked about last night quite a bit. So, you know, you want to know offline and online where people are hanging out. And what I mean by that is, are they on Instagram? Are they on Facebook groups? Are they, you know, really involved in a blog? Are they on Reddit? What does it look like in that online sphere? And especially for ecom, that's very important. But going back to the old school, farmers markets, in-person engagements, activations where your competitors aren't even thinking about that stuff. You really want to dive into that. So you want to kind of use these old school and new school tactics to broaden the reach of your message and build your audience that way. So that's kind of part of that whole process, is really looking at that. And Carrington, you had a great example last night about an orchestra, right?
Yeah, so a lot of people just think about online marketing and that offline marketing is dead. So we're gonna go back in time a little bit. I already sent you back to art school. We're going a little further now. But the first like his written use of offline marketing was through the radio, and it was for the orchestra. So the orchestra had very, very low ticket sales. They could not get anyone to put their butt in that seat. So they put the orchestra on the radio, and people listened on the radio. And the next time they had a show, they sold out. People bought the tickets. And that is one of the first like historical uses of offline marketing that can be really beneficial, and trying out different things can have a dramatic impact when you're just trying to get attention and get people to be like, "Oh, this exists." Because people may not have even known that tickets were for sale, but then they heard it. And at that time, going to the orchestra was a big thing. And they're like, "Oh, let me figure out where the next one is happening." And then the conversation starts to happen. So that was one example we were chatting about last night that was just interesting, and I think it's a fun story.
And then immediately that made my brain think about the Grand Ole Opry. And here's what we'll talk about. How many of you have listened to a podcast recently? Most people, right? Have you heard of the National Life and Accident Insurance Company? What? They created their own radio station to promote their business, and that eventually became the Grand Ole Opry because they knew their target audience was in this specific area, and they were looking for ways to get the word out. They knew radio was a big deal, but nobody's going to listen to commercials. They're going to listen to country music, though, and maybe we'll have some ads in the middle of that, right? So the Grand Ole Opry has its start from an insurance company. And there's so many examples of that behind the scenes that people don't really think about. Allstate's not doing that. Liberty Mutual didn't do that. The National Life and Accident Insurance Company did it. So, think about that quite a bit. And that's, just going back to the online and offline side of this, right? So now the most important part, and you see this time and time again with PR, timing and persistence. So these are the two things that are really going to impact what you do and when you do it. You think about editorial campaigns. You think about, oh, I'm trying to reach mompreneurs. Mother's Day. That's probably a good time to try and push some sales, right? But you can't message somebody 2 days before Mother's Day and say, please put me in your article. Oh my gosh, I definitely need to be in there. I love their. Bye. Done. You got to think ahead. So that means going back, slowing down, and planning things out. And, putting on my little roller derby helmet for a second, persistence pays off. Journalists get dozens and dozens and dozens of requests every single day, and you have a very short amount of time to get their attention. But if you keep moving forward, and even when you hit a big wall and you fall back and you have to dust yourself off, do you really want to skate to the sidelines, or do you want to get back up and try again and try a different route? And trust me, I have been knocked out and knocked down so many times in my life. But, it's all about moving forward and thinking ahead. And what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about a brand that has been constantly beaten down for years. But at the end of the day, they're winning the game. So I want you to take like a little guess. A brand that's really beaten down quite a bit, but then they end up winning. Okay? What do you see when you see this logo? And what immediately comes to mind when you see this logo? You can comment in the chat if you want. A band, yes. So Nickelback is a band. What else? What about this band? Are they the Beatles and everybody kind of loves them? Are they the people? Yeah, look at this photograph. Big no. We all hate that we know all the words. You think about these things. They are one of the most hated brands in the world. Everybody thinks
Number one.
back. The
You
number one. Yeah, the
you
number one.
know the number
Yeah,
one hated band in the world, Nickelback makes number one.
all the time. But they're making money hand over fist. And like everybody's talking about is Photograph. Now, Carrington, when did that song come out?
2005. So when we were talking about this last night, everyone hates Nickelback. But the first song that you think of is from basically 20 years ago. Not the like 5, 6 albums they've released since then, not all of the concerts that they sell out. And fun fact, they sell out almost all of their concerts. No seats left. But we hate them from 20 years ago. So why are they successful? Like, what is it? If everyone talks about that they're terrible, they're the most hated band in the world. What in
Meme
the
after
world
meme after meme all the time.
we all know the memes of the photograph and the whatever, right? The difference is they know they have an audience that'll go to bat for them. Those people who put their butt in that seat will fight tooth and nail to say that Nickelback is amazing. And they will do whatever it takes to prove you wrong. And those are the people that they market to, that they talk to. They don't care about everyone else because they know that they have such a strong following of people that all the hatred doesn't matter anymore. And when you break through that barrier, amazing things can still happen. You can be the most hated band in the world and still win awards and still sell out concerts and still do all of the things without falling into that bucket of saying, well, we're the most hated band in the world. Why should we keep trying? Right? You persevere. You know your timing. You understand how to market yourself to people who love you and keep those people coming back. So I think Nickelback is a really unique, like, just case study to say, how does your marketing and your PR and who you're talking to really matter? Because they are a very clear distinction that it matters so much. And you can still be massively successful.